It is Saturday on Raid Shadow Legends, but you knew that. Now, champion design in a game like this is not the easiest thing in the world, but it doesn't have to be the hardest thing in the world either. But sometimes, even though this game has been out for many years now, Plarium just doesn't get it quite right. So we're going to go over some champions that could have used a bit of a once-over. Now, before we begin, this is going to be regardless of a champion's overall power level or usability in the game. So I'm going to mention good champions, bad champions, niche champions in no particular order. And we're going to start with Tatura Rimehide. Now, obviously, this is not a bad champion. You have some decent skills here. This is fine, etc. But half my issue comes with this skill and how this shield buff only scales off damage. Now, sure, you have this to increase your defense, but this is not a damage dealing champion, not overly so. This ignores no mitigation, this doesn't, and this isn't even an attacking skill or provides an extra turn or anything. So if you are putting it in Savage, Helm Smasher, etc., you're not going to get a whole lot out of it than you would put that gear in any other champion. Now, obviously, War Master procs, anything else, will apply that damage here if you're attacking spiderlings or just a whole bunch of enemies at once. But in a lot of situations, you're not really building this champion with crit rate, crit damage, etc. So you're not going to get a whole lot out of this. But apart from that, the champion is fine, and you're probably using it more for support in a way, or the Swayed or Taunt by applying Perfect Veil on everything apart from this. So next we're going to go over to one who is definitely nowhere near as good, and that is Forus. Now, Forus has been buffed twice already, and still no one uses him, and there's a few reasons. The first off being that he's overly reliant on fear, the chance of landing fear, the fear of missing out. No, not that fear, never mind. That's for another video. But not only is this not guaranteed to actually be unlocked when enemies get feared, even if it's a full team. Like, I'm sure you know as well as I do that sometimes you can miss a 40% chance over and over, or higher. And then we have issue where sometimes you don't need critical on him, sometimes you do. Sometimes you don't need accuracy, sometimes you do. So what happens? You end up having to build accuracy and critical on him anyway. You might as well just not have this part of the skill whatsoever. And after all that, he doesn't hit particularly hard, he takes a long time to scale up by this damage, and he's just not very good. So moving on to the next champion is going to be Lakus for Chosen. Now, Lakus is a very old legendary. You can tell by how she has no passive whatsoever. All of her skills are pretty basic, and well, she could use a bit of a once-over in terms of her visual design because she looks like someone out of Dota 2, and that's not a good thing. So, first issue is that this has a 50% chance of an extra turn. Just a 50%, which makes this very unreliable in terms of whether you'd actually not want the extra turn because you want to keep buffs in her for a bit longer, or you want it and then she just doesn't give it. Now, the rest of the skill is okay, a bit below average nowadays. It's a 4-turn cooldown. And then the other issue is attacks enemy places only if it's critical. Now, this doesn't attack, well, it doesn't do anything AoE. Like, sure, she joins in, but it's with this default skill. And this, again, doesn't do damage by itself. So, building critical on her just for the sake of having this do something is a loss of durability stats elsewhere if you just wanted defense, HP, resistance, speed. Of course, if you're not bothered about resistance or you don't need the durability too much, then sure, you can give her crit rate gloves and you'll get this more often than not, but regardless, it's not the best design going. So moving over next is going to be Hacker and Smashlord. Now this champion was very recently buffed, and while if you were using him as a cleanse bot, that's perfectly fine. He does this, you don't need to book him, happy days. But turns out progress isn't always progress, because while this skill can now be critical, they reduced the ratio from 0.5x HP to 0.28x, and this shield again is based off damage dealt, which is fine if you have War Master on him and you're attacking a whole bunch of enemies, but he's not much of a damage dealer. Doesn't ignore mitigation, again, just like Tatura. This isn't an attacking skill, just like Tatura, and this isn't the most exciting thing in the world to put all of your best HP nuka gear on, so they kind of missed a bit of an opportunity there. Like, overall, he's better than he was, but I think they could have pushed him a little bit further. It wouldn't have mattered too much. So, next we're going to go over to, well, you saw it in the thumbnail, here it is, Taras the Fierce. Now, he stands with Ukraine, you should stand with Ukraine. If you don't stand with Ukraine, what are you doing? You're clearly not playing this game correctly. And all of this is fine. Very strong, he does a lot. He was face of the game for quite a while, better than pretty much everything. He's fallen off slightly now. And you're probably wondering, how does a skill like this fall off? How does this fall off? Well, it doesn't. The issue is this. First off, you think, okay, he cuts your attack, that's great. And against bosses, etc., this is fine. Against attack champions, it's also fine. Except then you look at his A2, and how this deals double damage to enemies who you can read, right? Now, this is a 0.35x, double damage against anyone else, will pretty much obliterate anything. Except then people will read this skill and think, hang on, can't I just attack him with my support or anyone else who doesn't really do damage and just drop my attack stats so that this won't hit me with double damage anymore? And you'd be correct. Defense champions, HP champions, they can hit into him. It's fine, they're not going to get anything out of it. He only punishes attack based. And then you have this. And again, you'd think, free fear, what could go wrong? Well, polymorph. And yeah, now you realise what the issue is? Yeah. Especially when what happens is, at the start of a match, he will fear anyone from these factions, and then if they're under Stone Skin, it will instantly remove that fear and put the Stone Skin on them. But polymorph check will still happen. So if you're against, say, a Siphi, an Ultimate Death Knight, Duchess Lilitu, Warlord, anyone else who may be in Stoneskin, might not be, but pretty much always runs polymorph, there is a chance that Taras will just instantly remove himself from a fight at the start of a battle. And nowadays, he would be better off if this part of his passive just didn't exist whatsoever. But I think the thing was, they would just put a whole bunch of attributes onto him without any real care or attention to try and make him seem, well, fierce, and didn't think about what might happen in some time. Like, sure, you could say, oh, it's counterplay against the fear, but you could just remove it anyway, or, well, I'm not going to say just flip the fear check because you can lose a turn that way, but again, polymorph is not guaranteed to happen. It's just, you get what I mean, right? Okay. So moving on to a champion who is not quite as complex, it's R-Matab. Now you're probably thinking, you're picking champions that you have, and in a way I am, but I've got quite a lot of legendaries across most factions now, so naturally I'm going to pull some of the ones who are kind of spuds. So again, this guy he was a sort of a random one-off that someone at Plarium felt really proud of, because they put him in the game, then immediately put a guaranteed for him at 15 Sacred. Was he worth 15 Sacred? No, he wasn't. So he's kind of a provoke, lockout champion with this, even though he doesn't actually provide counterattack here, which is strange. In fact, he has no way to give counterattack at all. And then we have this, which is the strongest passive of the game. If he hasn't done anything at all yet, his resistance increased by 50. Yeah, 50. That's all he gets. As soon as he does this, or this, or if he gets locked out because 50 resistance isn't too much, then yeah, he doesn't have a passive anymore. Then this is a 4-turn cooldown for God knows what reason, and yeah, he places block damage, but he doesn't counterattack, so this is, yeah. Again, this doesn't book up any further, it's just 50% by itself, and he's just a strange champion like that. So moving back over is going to be someone else who does similar things in terms of provoking people and putting their skills on cooldown, and that's Groverstalk. And you know as well as I do that this is probably the worst forward legendary in the game by a very significant margin. He has this, which is, you saw as well as I did, it's worse than what Executioner has, who is a rare. You have this, which is a 4-turn cooldown, only provokes people under increased attack. Like, what's the issue exactly with increased attack based carriers? Like, increased defense is fine, I guess. And then this resets when he gets a turn, when we already have champions who increase their defense when we can't attack. It doesn't reset, and this works with this and this, but this active effect is not counted as an attack. So if you build a bunch of resist and no accuracy, this is going to fail anyone who's got any kind of resistance whatsoever. And this is, again, pretty weak for Void Legendary, but this is more to do with his overall power level, and this is just how he's just an objectively flawed design. And then last but certainly not least is the last boss of the story mode. It's Mor-to-Maab. Now, big scary demon guy. He's apparently a destroyer of worlds or something. Mor-to-Maab sieved. Yeah, I'd sieve as well if I was his champion nowadays, because he's all about peril and the 20% chance of getting every time he's attacked. Now this is a dice roll champion of dice roll champions. You pick him if your opponents pick something like Mighty Yuko, Torment the Cold, Prince Kaimar, anyone else who has a A1 who attacks all enemies and they can't quite stop it. There's no skip turn button, but it's a 20% chance. Sometimes it works, sometimes it won't. You'll hit him once and he'll get it immediately. You'll hit him 20 times, he doesn't do it. It's not the most reliable thing in the world, and it's hard of a counter pick that it was, because obviously Harima stops him dead, and Harima's a very popular pick, but again, that's the overall power level. Apart from that, he's a bit of a spud, and yeah, he could use a rework at some point, because you see him very, very rarely nowadays. And even then, there are ways to deal with him, even if he's in Lightning Cage Stone Skin, to stop you removing it while he's basically moving 2 turns. Sun Wukong deals with it because he very rarely builds resistance Mor-to-Maab and can just turn him into a sheep. This can't be blocked. And of course, our friend also does the exact same thing, except this one gets around Ultimate Death Knight. Although, if you're putting Ultimate Death Knight and Mortu on the same team, you're probably a bit silly anyway. And our man's is just better than you in general, because he's dating the Arbiter. I'm not making this up. He is. He is so superior to you that you don't even know about it. See? He's not even looking at you. You're not interesting to him. Anyway, that's everything. See ya.